Welcome, everyone. Exciting webinar today with my friend Mark here. We'll introduce him in a second. But we're going to be talking about averting the SaaS data apocalypse with Wasabi and HYCU. I just like that one because I love disaster movies, and we're going to tell you how to avert disaster today. I'm in product marketing at Wasabi, and Mark Niemeyer is at HYCU, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me today. I am Mark Niemeyer, part of the product management team here at HYCU. My responsibility is around what we call our cloud, and think of that as an extension of a data protection platform that we built over the last almost 10 years now that is focused on protecting data sources that run as DBaaS, as PaaS, as SaaS. So yeah, very excited to be here and share a little bit of what we see out in the market, the threats that we see out there, and how to protect against those.
All right, thank you. With that, we will get started. What we're going to cover today. In today's webinar, we have a broad range of subjects talking about disaster recovery, data protection, and how to basically have peace of mind. We're going to talk about, in this webinar, combining HYCU's data protection and storage visualizations, augmented by the affordability and performance of Wasabi's hot cloud storage or cloud object storage. With that, organizations gain a comprehensive yet cost-effective and scalable solution for their data management needs. This unified approach ensures that not only is your data protection taken care of, but you also have accessibility and strategic flexibility into the adapting and evolving IT landscapes. As Mark will tell you, there is a growing number of applications, deployments and stuff, and we're going to talk how you can basically successfully protect those and still access them and recover should you need to. With that, we're going to go to the next slide, as I like to call it, a word from our sponsor. Wasabi, for those who have not heard of us, provides simple, predictable, and affordable hot cloud storage for businesses all over the world. We enable organizations to store and instantly access an unlimited amount of data at about a fifth the price of the traditional hyperscalers. And we don't have those complex tiers, and we don't have the egregious, as I like to call it, egress fees. We like to say we have free egress, free API calls. Wasabi is trusted by tens of thousands of customers worldwide and has been recognized by one of the technology's fastest growing and most visionary companies. And with that, Wasabi is thrilled to partner with HYCU to help mutual customers secure their application data and mitigate the threat of ransomware. And so when we talk about, ransomware, I think we have to sort of broaden it a little bit because there's lots of things that can cause you to lose access to your data. We've listed a number of them there, starting with ransomware attacks, but there's things like accidental deletion. Somebody hits the wrong switch, the wrong code command, whatever, and you've seen that in the news. Natural disasters, another one you've seen where something data center gets too hot, flooding, fire, those kind of things. Connectivity issues. Cyber intrusions and data breaches, even hardware failures. I mean, hardware is not perfect. There's a lot of redundancy that we both have in our technologies to help with that, but that can happen. And then software crashes, configuration errors, software upgrades, insider threats. I know that we don't like to admit it, but you can have disgruntled employees that do things as they leave the building. And finally, pandemics can do things like limit access to your data center. So we're going to talk about all those today.
Rob, one I would like to add is ourselves. We make mistakes all the time ourselves, right? We delete data all the time ourselves. So yes, there's a lot of external factors that can go wrong, but internally, there's things that can go wrong as well.
It's funny you mention that because I know many times, and I've heard stories, no names, where executives will a panic call to IT to recover something that they did a fat fingered something and basically deleted it. So yeah, you want to be able to be ready for that.
Yep.
So when we talk about immutable storage from the Wasabi side, we talk about the practice of 3-2-1, which a lot of you heard about, but we've added another one on there. That's 3 copies of your data, 2 stored locally at least, and on different media types, whether that's, NAS boxes, tape, or whatever, and then having 1 in the cloud. And what we add to it is, with that cloud one, let's make it immutable, because when someone comes in for ransomware, that's the first thing they're going to try to do is delete your backups. And if in fact you're immutable out there, 2 things can happen. 1, they can't delete it, so you have a recovery point. But 2, in some cases, they may go on to the next target because you're too hard. And the great thing about with Wasabi is since we don't charge for egress or API requests, you have the benefit and the, where you're not penalized financially for trying and testing out your DR scenarios. And then finally, just sort of a graphic that I've shown before, we did some research, partners have done research, and there's a lot of different, and we've talked about them, ways data can be lost, made inaccessible, corrupted and stuff. But what you don't realize is that even if you, let's say, for example, in ransomware, pay to recover that, a huge percentage of that data is corrupted because the ransomware people don't really care about if the keys work. They just want to get your money. So if they even give you a key, it doesn't always mean it's going to work and you're going to be able to get that data back, because there's a sort of a very brute force kind of job. True. I don't know if you've seen it, and I'll keep the names out of it, but there's a CISO from a large respected technology company that's being prosecuted by the government for an attack where they didn't disclose all the stuff early enough that they should have. And finally, disruption, because when you're down, you're not transacting business, you're not manufacturing, you're not taking stuff into inventory, you're not keeping customers happy. And a lot of customers then will go to your competition. So that 20 days on average is a long time to be without your data and without business. And that leads to, downsizing your business, which we don't want to do. So those are critical things of having both a plan and a robust solution that we'll talk about today. And I want to talk briefly about egress, because we talk about the fact that when you go to one of the large hyperscalers, that there's different tiers and they will put it in really inexpensive tiers. But should you ever need to pull that back, it can be 10x, 20x the cost savings that you got by putting in that tier. But on top of that, there's a lot of other fees, hidden fees. I like to use this iceberg analogy. When we talk about that, 27% say they incurred higher egress fees, but then there was operational fees, API call fees. Every time you basically peek at your data, reorganize your data, list it, do anything with an API call, they charge you. Even the API call to get the data that you want to egress that they would charge you for, they charge you for the call to do that. And then even deletion, where you want to delete it, you're still paying. So I sort of look at it as sort of the junk fees that a phone bill would have, or a cable bill, or even airlines now, where they keep adding things to the cost of this. And so with partnering with HYCU and Wasabi, you can alleviate your budget, as I like to call it, CFO friendly, and not have to pay those fees and use that money instead to grow your business. So the last graphic I'll show is that you think, okay, that's, fees are bad and stuff. But in a lot of the analysis we've done, almost half of the fees that the people that are using cloud storage are paying are for the storage fees and not for actually storing their data. And the fact that you almost have to ransom your data back, tongue in cheek, but it's really true, is something that more and more companies are becoming aware of. And that's why they're choosing to look at Wasabi, because of our free egress and our free API calls. And with that, I want to introduce HYCU, and he's going to tell you about the incredible data protection solutions that they have that will leverage Wasabi and keep your data safe. Mark? Awesome.
Thanks so much, Rob. Great introduction. And yeah, completely agree. Having a storage layer that is A, performance, B, performant and cost effective is absolutely critical to do anything around backups, to do anything around data protection. But yeah, I'm very eager to introduce HYCU. I don't know how many of you know HYCU. We're I would say we're still a startup, but we're growing fast. We have about 4,000 customers worldwide right now. 10 offices, very distributed development team, and we're 100% channel focused. We do all of our transactions through the channel. We are the only data protection platform that really is built to scale more and more types of data sources and so on. So I'll go into that a little bit. One thing I wanted to point out on this slide is around our support. We love our support team and we love our customers and making sure that they're happy, right? So I'm very proud of the fact that ever since we started measuring our NPS, we've consistently been above 90%. So people love our technology, people love our products, and people love our support team as well. Next slide, please.
I want to say that is impressive. Above 90, that's a very impressive achievement to get an NPS score of that.
Yeah, one of the things we started doing this is if you look at the history of HYCU, we've always been very closely aligned with Nutanix in the on-prem world, right? So our data protection is very well integrated with Nutanix, and Nutanix themselves pride themselves on their NPS score of 90, I think, over the last 7 years now. So we've just basically expanded that mantra. The other thing that you should know about HYCU is we're actually in the Magic Quadrant. For 2 years in a row right now, nicely located in the bottom right. We can go only up from there. But yeah, for a company our size to be in the MQ, very proud of that. Next slide, please. And then we have some really recognizable customer names as well. And there's definitely some of them that don't want to talk about it and so on, because in the end, I would still say there's a little taboo around data protection and so on, right? There's a little taboo around being very open around what happened within my company. We've seen what happened in Vegas a few weeks ago with the data breach, and I think they're up to like $100 million in losses right now, right? Mm-hmm. So anything around data protection, like Rob already said, can very quickly become very, very expensive. Next slide, please.
I want to talk briefly about that.
Yep.
I know a lot of companies don't want to talk about when that happens because of the negative press, but as you're seeing, it's leaking out, and there's more and more regulations being created that's going to require more disclosure faster. So having a solution that can mediate that and remediate that and solve that problem and not make you a public, pariah, so to speak, is a huge benefit to your company.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of things, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. There's a lot of things that companies can do to prevent, right? But I think we're in a time in this universe that it's not if, it is when. It is when something happens within the organization, right? And a lot of that comes from what's on the slide over here. Technology is changing so fast, right? That a lot of companies are working through their digital transformation. In most cases, that means having an on-prem workload, but also having one or more cloud vendors that they're working with, that they're running workloads in. But the surprising thing, since I joined a year ago, the average number of SaaS applications that people are using in their day-to-day organization is just immense, right? Within HYCU, and we're a small company, we did an internal survey. We use something like 85 SaaS services. The average enterprise within the US is using 220 SaaS services, right? So that crawl of data, that sprawl of data is just ever increasing. The speed of that is ever increasing. Next slide, please.
I think an important thing to think about there is that a lot of these companies with the shared responsibility model guarantee the application comes back up, but they don't ever want to say they're going to protect your data.
Exactly. And let's dive into that in over the next few slides. Wanted to talk really quickly about this slide. Like, if you look at the left over here, this is like the world 20 years ago, right? Everything was running within your own data center. The IT team basically had full control over what is running, how do we protect it, where do we store things. But as you can see, as time progressed, as we modernized our applications, the on-prem is actually shrinking, and there's more and more things like IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS that people are using on a different at a different scale. And like what Rob was saying is, the way you protect and the way you are responsible for this is not changing. 20 years ago, you were responsible for protecting those applications, that data within your data center. But even in today's world with the shared responsibility model, even if your application is running in the cloud as a SaaS, yes, they are the vendor, the ISV is responsible for making sure that the application is up and running and does failovers and is geographically spread across regions. But in the end, the data and the configuration of those applications is your responsibility. So you must make sure that you have a good copy of that data somewhere. Mm-hmm. Next slide. Yep. And that's exactly what's on the slide over here. I like to make the analogy to a parking structure, to a parking garage, right? Yes, we all use these, we park in them. The vendor, the owner of the parking structure is responsible for making sure that the structure is good, to make sure that the front entry gate is repaired when it's broken. But in the end, the car, and more importantly, the contents of the car, are your responsibility. they won't help you if you get broken in over there. The
That's a
same
great
thing
analogy.
is, yeah, the same happens with SaaS services. That is the shared responsibility model that Rob was talking about. So at HYCU, we really believe that data protection must change. If you look at the top names in the MQ, they have a very monolithic approach, right? They decide what they're protecting, and they are completely focused on-prem, and they've bolted on the public cloud. And I think across all the vendors in the MQ, the number of SaaS applications that they protect across all of them is less than 10, right? So there's a huge gap basically between where the market is, where you're deploying your applications, and the protection. So that's why we're saying this must change. And we're kind of starting that revolution. Like if you look 20 years ago, legacy was very infrastructure centric. We're saying we need to build a solution that can cover your entire data estate, whether that is on-prem, whether that is in the public cloud, whether that is running in a managed stack like SaaS, PaaS, or DPaaS. Next slide. And that's basically what we have built, what we're building, right? So on the bottom, you see all of those different types of data sources. But before you can actually protect it, you must actually know about them, right? With more and more SaaS services within your organization, shadow IT is actually booming as well, right? You see a lot of apps that are being managed at the departmental level that is not managed by central IT. I think over half of the applications out there are not managed centrally anymore. People like me, we can all sign up for something like a Notion, something like an AHA, pay for it with our own credit cards. But there is very important data out there, right? So first, we need to be able to discover that data, all of those data sources, and I'll go into how we do that. Of course, then there's the resiliency and availability, making sure that your data is protected. Then there's a level on top of that around compliance. In certain industry, you must keep copies of your data for 3, 5, 7, maybe even indefinitely. But on top of all of that, of course, it needs to be simple to consume, right? With everybody having ADHD, with everybody being used to the way we're deploying and managing apps on our cell phone, we also have those same requirements for our infrastructure, for our data protection. So let's
Funny story.
dive in.
There's a European customer I've talked to that now they have to store it for 52 years because it's mortgage data, and they have a 50-year mortgage now, and so they have to keep it a couple years after that. So 52 years.
That is, yep. And we start to see that more and more. It's like, yeah, I just need to keep this for a long, long time. And of course, for stories like yours, that is completely possible. So basically, the way we've done this to basically address all of those issues that I brought up in the previous slide is we have built a discovery engine that we call rGraph. rGraph hooks into, today it's Okta and Azure AD, and we basically scan all of the access information in those IDPs, and then we basically build a very nice visual for somebody like a VP of IT, a CIO, a CISO, to show, hey, these are all of the data sources in your data estate. These are the native capabilities that these sources have around data protection, i.e., can I do backups of them? Can I export my data? Do they have self-service restore capabilities, right? And basically, we bubbled that up as a very nice graphic where at the organization level, we give you a score of how protected you are, and we allow you to very quickly protect those as well. And that basically is the second layer, is the core data protection capabilities, going from on-prem, protecting workloads that are running as instances in the public cloud or even as cloud native instances more and more. And then, of course, with PaaS, DBaaS, and SaaS services, we're now basically complementing the entire data set. Our score on top of that, think of that as almost like a consultancy approach to assess how protected your company is in terms of all of those threats, all of those vectors that can attack your company all the time. So a very consultative approach. We're asking you a bunch of questions, and then we give you a score as well, and then we'll help you to improve that score. And of course, all of that is delivered through what we call the HYCU marketplace, which really allows you to very quickly discover and configure protection for all of those data sources. But all of that, of course, cannot exist without having a very robust storage layer. Like Rob explained, having storage that is performant, having storage that is cost efficient, but most importantly, having storage that is secure is very important, right? I can take backups all I want, but if the bad actor can go in and basically start deleting backups, and that's what they do, right? They get into your infrastructure, they found out where the backup vendor is, and then the first thing they do is basically blow that away, try to blow that away. But if you have storage that is configured with immutability, with worm support, and nobody, even the super admin, cannot touch that, cannot delete it, cannot encrypt it, then you always have a last known good copy of your data, right? So yes, you can build up all of those active layers around networking and intrusion detection, anomaly detection, but when, not if, when they get in, you need to have a way of recovery, right? And that is where HYCU basically complements this entire protection estate, if you may.
I want to talk about that briefly. We've just added a new feature that in the latest release called MUA, multi-user authentication, because we're learning that the next target beyond the actual immutability in the buckets and the worm is to try to delete the actual account, compromise the credentials of the person that can control that, because if they can delete the account, that can delete some of that stuff. So by having multiple people that have to approve any kind of change, that becomes a huge benefit to customers.
Yeah, I'm typically not a fan of decision by committee and so on, but in this case, it's absolutely required. So just flashing a few logos on the screen of data sources that we protect today. And like I said, we're working with partners, we're working with ISVs, we're working with SIs, and every month we're actually adding 3, 4, 5 more logos to this slide right here. We're very well covered on the Atlassian side. Why? Atlassian is actually an investor in HYCU, right? So Atlassian Ventures has invested in us. Okta is on here. We are invested by Okta as well. Okta is an investor. But you'll see us building out on the cloud side, on the SaaS side, all of those services that hold very, in some cases, mission critical data, like Salesforce is a good example, right? If Salesforce goes away, you cannot do sales, your top line gets impacted immediately. But think of something like Jira. If Jira falls away, or Marketo, or Notion, if those data sources fall away, all of those teams will be less productive. They'll be stuck until they get access again, right? So that has definitely an impact on top line, but also on bottom line in the long end. So call to action. Both HYCU and Wasabi, we're very we very much like our PLG motion, our product-led growth. So we would really encourage you to sign up for free trials on both on the Wasabi side and on the HYCU side. Rob, you can talk about the free trials on the Wasabi side. On the HYCU side, we actually give you, by default, I think it's 2 weeks, but it's full access to our full functionality. So we'll spin up your account. You can play around with in a sandbox in your production environment, whatever feels comfortable to you. And of course, you can connect to Wasabi storage to actually do the storage. Rob, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I know it's a terabyte for 1 month. So you have within their trial, you can point it at Wasabi. You can play with all of the applications you want to protect with the settings, the security, the mutability, worm, all that kind of stuff, and just test it out without any financial obligation. But I believe that once you try that, you're not going to want to stop using it because of the simplicity, the power, and the cost effectiveness.
Exactly. Yep. And once you log into the HYCU trial, we'll guide you, we have a guided wizard that guides you to set up the connection to Okta, to set up connection to Azure, and basically do that initial discovery. Setting up protection for those data sources is typically just a few clicks. We need an API key, we might need a username, and then it's just assign a policy and we automatically will protect those data sources, whether that is running as an instance, whether that is running at SaaS, whether that is running on-prem, right? But really, by leveraging the power, the capabilities of Wasabi, like I said, you have a copy of your data that nobody can delete, that nobody can encrypt, that allows you to very quickly recover from anything that goes wrong in your organization, whether that is accidental deletions, I clicked something I shouldn't have, whether that is a malicious actor coming in, whether that is external hackers, or maybe even a disgruntled admin, or a script that is malbehaving. That's always possible as well, right? So it's really, like I said, it's an insurance policy.
And for those who don't know, an oopsie is a deep technical term. It's kind of been around for 50 years. If you were in the industry back then, you probably remember that one, but that was a really important term back then.
Very fair. On the next slide, we have actually how to sign up for those trials, whether you want to type the URL or whether you want to do a quick scan of the QR codes. It just takes a few minutes basically to get signed up with both. Like I said, at the moment you log into HYCU for the first time, we'll give you a tour of the product. We'll show you how to configure things, how to start backing up things, and so on. So yeah, I hope this was very helpful. There's a bunch of information on the HYCU website as well around solution briefs, demos, blogs, etc., etc. So I would highly encourage you to browse around over there as well.
In the Bright Talk panel you're looking at right now, you'll see on the sidebar resources where you can click into there and get the links that we see up here. You can get some additional resources, white papers and stuff to help you out. And there's a section up there where you can ask questions too. And that'll be the sort of the next thing we do is answer any questions that you have that have either come in during the course of this presentation or that you've just thought of. But we'd love to answer your questions.
Yeah, always.